I got a great guest for you guys in studio. Her name is Rebecca Parson. She's running for Congress in Washington's 6th District. We already have a Democratic congressperson there, so she's gonna make a case for why you should get a new one. Rebecca, welcome.
Thank you, thanks for having me.
Of course, great to have you here. Okay, so who's the current Democratic incumbent there?
It's Representative Derek Kilmer. He's a Democrat. He's the chair of the New Democrat Coalition and just the Third Way Caucus in Congress. And he also belongs to the Problem Solvers, so he's a pretty conservative Democrat.
Okay, sold. Website is RebeccaForWA.com, as in Washington. That's where you donate and volunteer. You don't take corporate PAC money, right?
Nope, no lobbyist money, no corporate money.
Okay, RebeccaForWA.com, as in Washington. So the reason I say that, guys, is Third Way is the bankers that try to take over the Democratic Party. New Democrats are the conservative Democrats. So this guy is basically saying, I'm for sale, but hey, don't worry about it, I'm a Democrat. I am worried about it. So anybody else in the primary?
Nope, not right now. There will probably be a couple Republicans, but as of now, no other Democrats.
And you got to beat the Republicans to make the runoff, because in Washington, you could 2 Democrats can go to the general election, right?
Yeah, like California, we have the top 2.
That's right. Okay. I remember Sarah Smith beat the Republicans to go up against Adam Smith in a Democrat on Democrat primary up in Washington. So looking forward to it this time too.
Yeah.
So, well, okay, Washington's 6th District then must be a red district or a purple district, and that's why Kilmer's got to take the banker money and he's got to work with all the corporate interests, because the red district that you're in loves big business, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. No.
No?
It's a really working class district. It's voted for the Democratic president in every election since the district was founded. We've had a Democratic representative since the 60s. It's very blue, it's working class. It would really benefit from progressive policies like the Green New Deal and Medicare for All. But instead we had a representative very similar to Kilmer before him, Norm Dix. He was in office for 30 years. He chose Kilmer to succeed him. So we've actually had 40 years of the same corporate rule. And like Joe Crowley, who was chair of the New Democrats, that's what Kilmer's doing now. And I think in a similar way, he's positioning himself to be Speaker of the House. And yeah, our district is working class, it's blue, it's Democratic, and it would, there's really no reason.
Well, so we just showed some of your district in the videos. It made me want to move to your district.
Yeah.
And you're right, that is a startling similarity to Crowley. And Crowley was basically handed that seat by another person in the machine, dropped out of the race, and with almost no time left, put Crowley's name on the ballot. The good news there for AOC was Crowley had never been challenged and never really won the seat in the first place, so nobody knew him when they went up for election. So I don't know how many people know your opponent, that's the current sitting congressman, if he's a part of that machine and backed by the bankers, et cetera. Wait, do you have a giant number of banking executives that live in your district?
No.
Oh, you don't? Okay, then you might be in good shape.
Yeah.
All right, so then let's talk about your background and your policies, okay? So we get it, Kilmer's represents the moneyed interests, okay? So how about you? You come from the Rockefellers or the Rothschilds or who?
The Waltons, yeah.
The Waltons, yes, the Kochs. Are you a Koch? You're not a Koch?
Secret Koch.
No, okay.
Yeah, actually, my grandfather was in the military. He was an Army officer, and my dad was a Foreign Service officer. And, yeah, that's where it is.
Okay.
And I thought about going into the Foreign Service, but I really wanted to enact change. I wanted to be able to affect policy. And so I looked at different ways of doing that. A couple years ago, I got involved with Indivisible Tacoma. I led that for a while. And yeah, that's it.
Okay, no, that's not it either.
Funded by George Soros, but yeah.
By the way, it's not. Okay. Yes, that's grassroots, no question.
Yeah. And the Indivisible Guide is amazing, but I think that it's more effective on some representatives than others, namely the more corporate ones, it's not as effective on, they just don't budge. And so we would, do these town halls and these letters, one after the other, and it's like, you just get this really nice, polite form letter back, and it's like writing Comcast. They write back, it's like really polite and everything. It starts, dear valued customer, and then their nice response, and then nothing changes. And so I was, it got really frustrating. I started looking more into his background, and he's one of the top 10 most conservative Democrats in the House. And not only is he chair of the New Democrats, he also belongs to the Problem Solvers, which is a very conservative caucus made of Republicans and Democrats. It's funded by Republican billionaires. It's been behind a lot of the conservative pushes in the House. And I thought, somebody who takes, $2 million every cycle from corporate interests and big donors, and who belongs to these caucuses, who is so conservative, he's just never gonna go for working class interests. He's gonna be serving the donors, and so that's why I decided to run.
Yeah, so everybody in Washington thinks I'm very impolite because I say obvious things such as, when you take $2 million from corporations, I got news for you, you work for corporations. And so, again, I don't know the answer to this question. Did Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump win that district?
Hillary Clinton won almost all of it. There's one county that Donald Trump won. And this is really interesting because, of course, the centrist argument is like, well, that means we need to go more Republican light, more centrist. We need to just be fake Republicans and then they'll vote for us instead of the real thing. But what's interesting about this county is this is the first time they had gone for Republican in 70, 80 years. And I have friends who live there on the Olympic Peninsula. It's a beautiful, beautiful rural community. And he said, even among his friends, his family that are Republicans, they voted for Trump. He said, the Olympic Peninsula is not getting more Republican, it's getting more populist.
Yes.
And, yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
It's not complicated, guys. They're frustrated. Hillary Clinton was the most establishment candidate we've ever had. And even so, she won your district. I mean, so there's no excuse for Kilmer to be among the top 10 most conservative Democrats. He just likes the money, he likes the power. So do you know what his voting record is on, Green New Deal just came out, to be fair, but you could sign on as a co-sponsor. I don't know if he has. Medicare for All, been around a long time. Do you know what his record on those are?
He refuses to co-sponsor both. He gives pretty evasive answers on Medicare for All and the Green New Deal. In private conversations that his staff have with activists, they've said he won't support the Green New Deal. And similar excuses that you hear from other people in Congress, they can't take the no fossil fuel money pledge because that would violate House ethics rules somehow.
Well, actually, it probably would though. The House ethics rules are you must be corrupt. If you're not corrupt, we'll blacklist you, make sure that you can't get any people working on your campaign, any consultants, etc. So that probably does make sense since Pelosi put it together. So I'm going to ask you a random curveball here. If you win the seat here and Pelosi's still around, do you vote for her for Speaker of the House?
If there's nobody more progressive, I would. But I would not appreciate some kind of maneuver like the Problem Solvers were doing where they were trying to get somebody more conservative than her in. If she's the best, most progressive choice, I would, but I would hope there would be somebody more progressive to choose from.
All right, I hear you. So what are your top priorities if you win?
Number one is the Green New Deal because I think it's an existential threat we face. It's in my district, where I live in Tacoma. We've had summers of ashes literally falling from the sky because of wildfires not even in Tacoma, in British Columbia, Eastern Washington, just coming up and falling from the sky like that. We have Native communities that are having to move because of the rising ocean tides, like lots of stuff like that. And so I would address that first. And then since it has a federal jobs guarantee in it, that's also really important for my district. Second would be Medicare for All and real single payer Medicare for All, not kind of a Medicare for All light or, keep the private companies still making their profit off insulin and all of that. And then the third one would be my housing plan, which includes national rent control and building 12 million public housing units in the next 10 years, because that's how many we're short. And what's interesting about national rent control is that we had it in World War II. We had it under President Nixon, who instituted it. And President Truman wanted it because he thought it would stave off communism. I don't know what the logic there was because I think the right would now say that rent control is communist, but I want universal national rent control and then a massive investment in public housing.
Yeah, on behalf of Anna Kasparian, let me say Rebecca for WA.com. Okay, because no one cares more about the housing problems in America than Anna does on this show. And I don't often get national candidates talking about housing problems, but it's a real problem. Ironically, we did a story today. You mentioned Richard Nixon. It's true. A couple of his subordinates actually worked on getting more affordable housing. Their names were Dick Cheney and Don Rumsfeld. This is a true story. It's a true story. We didn't include it because we ran out of time when we were covering the story from the New York Times earlier today. But back then, even though those guys were massively right-wing, we hadn't lost our democracy completely yet. So they were like, oh, we got to get votes. In order to get votes, we have to get housing for not just poor people, but middle-class people, because it's becoming unaffordable. Since then, it's become far more unaffordable, but corporate Republicans and Democrats are like, who cares? I don't get my money from you. I don't care at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So that's what you ran into when you were at Indivisible. You can send Kilmer 1,000 letters, he wouldn't care at all. You send him $1,000, you'll get his attention. Interesting top priorities. I don't think I let you finish. So you were talking about how you were in Indivisible Tacoma, and then what happened next to get you, like, what were you doing and what made you want to run for Congress?
Well, I wanted to run for office. I thought it would be a good way to serve. I wasn't really sure what I would run for. And as I just started learning more and more about Derek Kilmer's positions, and then we started getting these dire warnings like the 2030 climate deadline. And it's a big step to go, first time candidate running for Congress, but I thought, I could spend the next 15 years kind of kissing rings and doing all of that and trying to curry favor and get in a position where I would be, a so-called viable candidate. But by that time we would be way past 2030. And so I decided this was really the best course of action to take because we just don't have the time for this kind of corporate incrementalist stuff.
Yeah, we had a Category 5 park itself on top of the Bahamas for a couple of days, which is unusual. We have the Alaskan snow forest on fire, which is unusual. We have an area the size of Vermont on fire in the Siberian forest, which is unusual. And yet the Kilmers of the world sit there saying, Green Dream or whatever, not interested, not gonna co-sponsor it.
Exactly.
So what's your plan for defeating him?
My plan, I have two approaches. One is raising my national profile, letting people know just how critical this race is, because as chair of the New Democrats, he's in control of a lot of money. They dispense money to candidates. Also, he donates hundreds of thousands to the DCCC through his own fundraising. So he's in charge of both the money he fundraises and gives to candidates in the DCCC, and also as chair of the New Dems, just millions going out to other establishment Democrats to try to maintain the status quo. And so it's really important to cut off that flow of money, get somebody else in the seat for Washington's 6th congressional district, and also just really send a message and say, like, this third way stuff is over and progressives and the country and regular working people want something else. And then the second one is in my district, a massive canvassing campaign. So it's a big district, but I'm gonna have teams all over the district. We're out canvassing every night and having people just get to know who I am and why my policies are better and why they should vote for me.
So last thing, you're part of the LGBTQ community. And normally, when you're a woman and you're part of that community, et cetera, a lot of the big national Washington groups come to help you. So I'm sure since you're in that community and women empowerment, and so they've all come to rush you.
They're just knocking down the doors,
right? No.
Talked to one of them. It's a national organization. I fall into their constituency, and they said, we wouldn't be opposed to endorsing you, but we only want to endorse viable candidates, and that means raising $150,000 in your first quarter.
I see. So if you're not already wealthy, sorry, you're not viable. I wonder how we got to have a corrupt Congress. I can't quite tell. Right. By the way, that's not the Republican Party, that's the Democratic Party and their allies. Okay. Rebecca for Washington.com, Rebecca for WA.com. That's the website. Links will be down below if you're watching this later on YouTube or Facebook. Just click on them, donate, volunteer. There's no corporate PAC money. This is how progressives take power, and so we can get you results. And tell everyone you know in Washington's 6th district they have a real alternative. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
If you liked this interview and you're at the end, so apparently you liked it a little bit, thank you for watching. We really appreciate it. You can watch them live as they happen if you're a member. Only members get that. Go to tytnetwork.com/join. And you get not only interviews live, you get the Young Turks live, you get Aggressive Progressive live, Old School, and all of it commercial free. Come join us right now, tytnetwork.com/join.